Hello, welcome to What's the Point? So, my name's Jai, and like a lot of people with way too much time on their hands, I've spent a considerable amount of that time asking what is the point in various different things, and especially whilst working different jobs. Um, I mean, whilst being a barman or a dinner serving person or a gardener or a painter decorator or ice cream scooper or whatever, you tend to spend a lot of time on the toilet because it's good. You know, you get paid for sitting on the loo. And whilst you're sat on the toilet, a great thing to do is ask what's the point in all of this of your job, but also of the things that you get engaged with doing in that job. For example, you know, what's the point in ice cream? You know, genuinely, it's a fattening snack that kind of gets everything sticky. It leaks, it spills everywhere, and at the end of the day, it's kind of fundamentally flawed in that it melts when it's hot, but it's also only really enjoyable when it's hot. And after having kind of wasted a lot of time studying the humanities, you also kind of wonder about that. You know, what's the point in studying potentially useless things only in order to kind of continue teaching those things to a lot of other unsuspecting people. But really, that's kind of why I decided to set up this channel. And the goal, if you can even see one, is just to meander through what the point of various different things are, preferably things suggested by yourselves, as banal as ice cream and as philosophical as altruism, and to kind of take them from different angles and at some point illustrate you know, what the point might be in each of these individual things. But I think the best place to start really is not with a question of what's the point of something in particular, but more importantly, what's the point in asking what's the point? In other words, what's the point in this channel? What's the point in what's the point? Well, psychology today, and there's a great place to start, would argue that the puzzling thing about the point is that nothing has a point and everything has a point. Thanks, Psychology Today, for enlightening all of our lives. But they do go on to say that psychologically speaking, one of the main points is control, you know. And what is control? Well, control is minimizing the difference between anticipation and experience, right? So the goal, sort of psychologically speaking, is this minimization of control, and we see that all over the place. Zizek recently released a philosophical video dealing with the notion of falling in love, and he argues that we've invented all kinds of dating apps, not to reduce the capacity of being in love, but to reduce the falling aspect, to increase the control with which one has over the act of falling in love. On the other hand, you have multiple religions which have an answer for this question. What's the point? For Christianity, the point is ultimately to lead a good life according to the parameters outlined in the Bible, and then get to spend all of eternity in heaven. For Buddhism, the goal is to escape the kind of vicious binding circle of samsara and achieve a sense of universal unity. But that's not really the real question here. Now, for Arthur Danto, he argues that modern philosophy begins with René Descartes, and René Descartes has the quote that we all know and love, I think, therefore I am. Now, why is I think, therefore I am significant? Well, it's not really because it brought about any kind of enlightenment or anything. It's because it turns the question inwards. It questions not what is outside my door, but how can I know what is outside of my door? The question becomes self-reflexive. It becomes focused on me, and that's what we're really doing here, is we're questioning the very means of asking. Why ask anything? Why ask? What's the point? Something. Well, interestingly, a good analogy would actually be when something's working, for example. We never really tend to ask if something is working until it stops. And what's more, we never really ask how something works until it ceases to work. I've never questioned how my mobile phone works until it doesn't. And what we find is that the second it breaks, we're suddenly interested in how it works. And it provides a heuristic opportunity, a learning opportunity to develop. And this is the same thing with asking what's the point. Once we question something's purposefulness, once we question the point in something, we open up a period where we can question through its purposiveness how we interact with that thing. If we change how we view this thing acting in the world, we also change how we may interact with it and how we kind of perceive it. So, if that's the point of asking what's the point, let's take an example. To take a particularly banal one, because I was kind of hard on ice cream earlier, let's use the example of ice cream. Well, on the surface, ice cream might seem pointless, but actually, it has a series of distinct points, a series of purposes in our life. Firstly, it does provide some kind of nutritional value, not a huge amount, but it does. It has sugar, calcium, potentially some vitamins, some fat, even a little bit of protein, depending on what kind of ice cream it is that you want to eat. And it provides cooling on a hot day. On a hot day, everyone loves to eat an ice cream. There's a reason it's so popular in Italy. And what's more, the sugar content contains, or rather will produce serotonin, and this serotonin might bring you up if you're having a particularly bad day. It might lift your mood. But what's more, we see with ice cream certain cultural associations. It's luxurious, precisely due to its pointlessness. So we sort of associate ice cream with things like holidays, and we associate it with a comfort provided in its indulgency, because it is luxurious, it is indulgent, and this provides a certain feeling of pleasure, a certain comfort. So we have the introduction of things like breakup ice cream. The stereotype of eating ice cream when one is feeling down and binge watching a series. So it develops these cultural symbols as well, and as anyone who's watched V for Vendetta or something similar knows, a symbol holds power in its own right beyond simply what it represents. And what's more, ice cream has an economic value. It keeps businessmen, advertising agencies, refrigeration companies, poor students like myself employed. And what's more, if we kind of situate ice cream historically, then we see it as having functions as a symbol for wealth. Before refrigeration, keeping ice cream cold was really quite difficult. So it was a symbol of wealth. And therefore we could associate ice cream as being the same as bling or, neon strips underneath a particularly fly car or something like this. But now it exists merely as a luxury commodity, but one which is used both to sell things and to be sold in its own right. Well, viewed like this, ice cream isn't completely pointless. It's instead just one piece on a kind of gigantic puzzle of technological, scientific, economic, and socio-cultural developments, right? People needed to store ice cream, so they come up with special ways to do so, improving technology. They need to sell it, so we come up with economic models of doing so. And in this sense, due to its popularity, ice cream has actually had an incredibly purposeful function over the course of its own history. So what's the point in asking what's the point in ice cream? Well, because now we can position ice cream on some kind of a map of other things. So even if it doesn't have a universal point, even if I can't offer a reason why ice cream floating in space has some intrinsic value, what we can start to do is map ice cream in relation to other things on this planet, both historically and right now. In the same kind of sense that, rabbits might not mean a lot to you But your rabbit really does. You know, I know my old rabbit Alfie meant a lot to me, and why was that? Was it because he was a special rabbit? No, he was quite a mediocre rabbit, but his relation to me, his purpose to me, his emotional support was very significant and provided a certain kind of point in his existence. So really, this is why we need to ask, what's the point? Is to find the positions on a kind of map of things and define their purposefulness in relation to each other. Now, obviously, I'm not God. You know, God could probably trim his beard and take better care of himself. So I can't provide any sort of universal purpose. And for that reason, I would never try and answer the question of what's the point in life. But what we can do is make small steps on kind of colouring in a map of relations, which helps us learn a lot of things about different aspects of our daily life that we either don't understand the point or seem so pointless, so banal that we take them for granted. And in doing so, learn some good trivia to be used in any kind of pub quiz that you might be going to. So thank you very much. And I'll be kind of releasing these videos on and off, interjected with some other lecturing videos on different topics, and it would be grand. I'd love it if I could have suggestions on things that people found particularly pointlessness, and you know, hopefully my video editing skills will get better during the course of this. So I look forward to hearing from people, and I'll speak to you in the next episode of What's the Point?